You're changing, I'm changing, the community's changing. And it's happening in a way that's going to feel more rapid than it has maybe in your entire life. This transformation that's occurring. In order to harness the transformation, it's about being authentic in who you are and what brings joy to your heart. Don't suppress. I think back to that night in Cusco. And I'm so thankful that I had the courage to knock on that door, face my parents, and have a real talk conversation with them that was incredibly uncomfortable for all of us. But I think we're all better for it. Because there's no more hiding. So what do you need to do to open your heart? What do you need to do to experience joy and laughter? How can you do that in a way that challenges the community, the group? And what are you willing to bring to an end in 2025? Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your guide to understanding the current planetary and astral alignments. Together, we'll explore how to harness these cosmic frequencies, empowering you to reach your highest potential as you navigate the days ahead. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian. Welcome to the Weekly Transit, your weekly channel for learning the language of astrology for the purpose of understanding the planetary and astral alignments and how to work with these powerful frequencies to your benefit. I'm your host, Scott Tajarian, and this is the week of December 30th to January 5th. The last week, the last couple days, and the first few days, last couple days of 2024, first few days of 2025, where the theme of the week will be endings and beginnings, because we're ending 2024, beginning 2025, as we highlight the new moon in Capricorn and Venus in Pisces. If you enjoy our content and want to support the podcast, please consider subscribing to our YouTube channel, Spotify, Apple, liking our videos, leaving a comment or question, rating us 5 stars, reviewing the podcast on Apple, or if you'd like to support the podcast monetarily, you can do so through Spotify or Donor Box. The links to do so are in the show notes. We truly appreciate your engagement. It helps us tailor our content to your interests and grow our community by reaching new listeners. Of course, if you're curious to learn how any of the following transits are affecting you directly, if you're interested in hearing how or hearing what 2025 has in store for you and how you can work with the cosmic energy to navigate your way successfully, you can contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. So, endings and beginnings. There's so much that I want to get into this week. So much that I want to get into. I'm trying to think if I'm going to have time to get into all of it. Like, obviously, we're going to get into the transits. And, I've got more episodes coming out of interviews on the Weekly Transit. We've already interviewed Ingrid and her new co-host for their podcast, Naked and Ambitious. Karina, really fun interview. I followed that up with an interview with Delisa Hawking, 5th generation psychic. If you have not watched or listened to those interviews, I encourage you to do so. They're very interesting, or at least I found them to be interesting. Hopefully you will as well. The reason why I find them to be so interesting is because the most interesting thing to me on planet Earth are the people who inhabit them. And so these interviews and conversations from an astrological lens lend to understanding the individuals who come on this show spiritually and astrologically, energetically. They're sharing their stories. We're learning about who they were, what they've gone through, and how they got to where they are today. To me, there's nothing more inspiring than the stories of the individual. It's what I love most when I think about sports. And when I used to watch the Olympics, what was more interesting to me than the actual events was when they were doing the story about the individual competing in the event. That's what made me want to watch the event, because I was invested in the story of this individual. In the next week or two, I'm going to release an interview that I did with Ricky King, another astrologer from Soul Path Astrology. Such a fascinating story, Ricky. Then I've got Ace coming up after that, Alicia Easter, and Drew Marich. Interesting individuals. Every single one of these people have been through the ups and downs, the highs and lows, and they've endured. And that's the inspiration. And so I'm asking individuals to come on here and to be vulnerable, to share intimate parts of themselves that they feel comfortable sharing with the audience. You're such a beautiful audience. There's so much love in this audience. I've received so much love and encouragement from you each week, whether you're messaging me on Instagram or leaving a comment on YouTube or Spotify. I really appreciate all the support. You've helped carry me through 2024. And it's been a wonderful year. And as we've gone through this transition from Ingrid and I to Gabriella and I to now just me, in asking other people to come on this show and to be vulnerable, I too feel like I need to call upon myself to share more about my story. I've gotten a lot of encouragement from those of you that have been listening over the last few weeks as I've shared more and more about my personal story. So I really appreciate that encouragement. It's through that encouragement that inspires me to want to share more, because I feel like sharing my story helps inspire you, helps lift you, just as the stories of those who come on this show with me to share about themselves lifts me up, inspires me. But before I get into that story that I want to share about myself, which has to do with 2025 and 2025 being a 9, and in understanding that 2 plus 0 is 2, 2 plus 2 is 4, and 4 plus 5 is 9. That's 2025 equals a 9. It's inspired me to reflect on every 9 year that I've experienced in my life. And so I want to get into that. We got some good stuff there to get into. I'm excited to share, to be vulnerable with you. But before I do, I do want to kind of dip my toe into some pop culture because last week I was talking about Chris Pratt and how occasionally I become obsessed with him. There's another person that I become obsessed with as well. He's a fellow Scorpio. He was born almost a year to the day after me. Ryan Reynolds. Yeah, he was born almost a year after me, almost exactly a year after me. And he is married to Blake Lively. Wow, what a couple. You know, I never like to think of couples as being like, well, this is the perfect couple. I don't feel like that's fair to the couple because I don't know Blake Lively. I don't know Ryan Reynolds. All I know is everything that you know from seeing them in TV or film or in the tabloids. That's it. So I don't know these people personally. I don't know what goes on in their lives. And I don't know. But astrologically speaking, I can see the magic that occurs in their charts. And it really is magical. But the reason why I was thinking about Ryan Reynolds is because something came across my feed about Blake Lively and how Blake Lively is in a lawsuit right now with her former co-star and the director of her most recent film that he co-starred with her. It Ends With Us. And I have not seen this film. I don't know if I'm going to watch the film because, I mean, there's a curiosity for me to want to watch the film just because of the scandal that's going on around the film. But it also feels like the film is tainted by this scandal for me. So I don't know if I'm going to watch it. And I've never even heard of this co-star. Maybe you know him, Justin Baldoni. He starred in Jane the Virgin, and I think that's what he's most famous for. And he directed and acted in this film with Blake Lively, and she has sued him for sexual harassment, I believe. You know, I don't know exactly what the lawsuit is, but it's in that realm of sexual harassment. But the reason why I bring it up is because, yeah, sexual harassment lawsuit is, I was looking at her chart, and the day that she filed the lawsuit, which was she filed it on December 20th. And I was like, oh my God, she must be working with an astrologer, right? I mean, there's just too much going on here that is mind-blowing to me about, like, this is the perfect time to file the lawsuit. It's the sun's at 29 degrees, forming a trine with her Jupiter, the planet of luck and expansion, the planet that rules law, Lord of justice. Jupiter is the Roman god that is the equivalent of the Old Norse god Thor, and Thor carries the hammer of the gods because the gods know that Thor will be righteous in using that great power. Blake Lively wields great power with the law. I would never want to be in a court battle with Blake Lively because she was born with a 9th house Jupiter. If you're born with Jupiter in the 9th house, you're a force in the courtroom. So, Ryan Reynolds, this is one of the magic points of their chart. He was born with Chiron at 29 degrees in Aries. She was born with Jupiter at 29 degrees in Aries. So expanding his wound, but expanding and healing his wound. On December 20th, the day that she filed this lawsuit against Justin Baldoni, The sun was at 29 degrees in Sagittarius. Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. So the sun at 29 degrees in Sagittarius, the ninth sign, aligning with Blake Lively's Jupiter in the ninth house. I mean, it's like, whoa, wow, okay, something's happening here. She's been tipped off or informed. The moon was transiting through Virgo, the sign where the moon was when she was born, so she has that lunar power. Mars, the planet of action, the god of war, at 4 degrees in Leo, conjunct at the exact same degree as her part of fortune at 4 degrees in Leo, so energizing her sense of luck, energizing her fortune from her heart, encouraging her from her heart. The North Node, the transiting North Node at 2 degrees in Aries. Where was the North Node when Blake Lively was born? 2 degrees in Aries. In the 8th house. So Blake Lively, her soul's purpose is to be confident, courageous, authentic when it comes to intimate bonds. In this film, which I have not seen, Justin Baldoni is the romantic lead for Blake Lively, but they're in an abusive relationship. So there's intimacy. And she's accusing him in real life of sexual harassment. The 8th house, where her North Node is the sign that is the house that rules sex. It's associated with the 8th sign, which is Scorpio, which is Ryan Reynolds' sign. Scorpio, the sign and the house that rules sex. So she's in this intimate sexual entanglement with Justin Baldoni. Not that they really had sex, but sexual harassment, romantic lead. In the film, there's intimacy, there's kissing, there's simulated sex, I imagine, in the film. She felt threatened, and now she's lashing out courageously, confidently, authentically, we assume. We don't know what all the facts are, but the North Node has returned to where it was when she was born, and it was there on the day that she filed this lawsuit. That tells me something. Wow. Okay. Then there is Venus, Lady Luck, the goddess of love and beauty, forming a sextile, a supportive alignment with Blake Lively's Saturn at 14 degrees in Sagittarius. Venus at 15 degrees in Aquarius, aligning with her Saturn. That is also an auspicious omen astrologically that is supporting her as Venus is transiting through the 6th house, which is the house that represents her work, her job, and the relationships that she has within these working environments. So Jason Baldoni is her co-worker. She's in this dispute with him. And Venus, the planet of relationships, transiting through the house that represents her job, aligning with Saturn, the authority, in Sagittarius, the sign that rules the court, the law, righteousness, at 14 degrees in Sagittarius in Blake Lively's natal chart. It's really magical. She's either incredibly in tune with the vibe of what she needs to be doing and when she needs to be doing it, or she's working with an astrologer. And just, quickly to reflect on Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, why they're such a dynamic couple from my astrological perspective is Ryan Reynolds was born with the sun, the North Node, the moon, Uranus, and Mars all in Scorpio. Blake Lively was born with Mars, the sun, Venus, Mercury, and the moon all in Virgo. So both of them were born under a new moon. Both of them were born with a 5-planet stellium in the sign of their sun. So Blake Lively is a Virgo stellium, and Ryan Reynolds is a Scorpio stellium. But what makes it really click is that Blake Lively was born with Mars, the planet of attraction, the planet that rules the physical act of sex, and the sun at 1 degree in Virgo. She was born with Venus, Lady Luck, the goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, at 2 degree in Virgo. Ryan Reynolds was born with the sun at 0 degrees in Scorpio, the North Node, and the moon at 3 degrees in Scorpio. So Ryan Reynolds' sun, his identity, his soul's purpose, and his emotional nature is connecting to Blake Lively's identity, her sense of courage and attraction, and her love nature. His Mars, his planet of attraction, is aligning with her moon, the planet of emotion. So both of their Mars are aligned with each other's moons. Their suns are in alignment with each other. It's a lot of magic here in their chart. I could go on, but I'll leave it there. And I'm curious to hear your reflections of this deduction. Are you following this Blake Lively lawsuit? Are you a fan of Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds? What is your reflection or experience of their relationship? I don't really follow it too closely. I don't follow them on social media. I don't watch all of their films. I have seen a few of Ryan Reynolds movies. As you know, like when I talked about getting attacked maybe a month ago in one of the episodes, on the time that I got attacked, I was actually walking to the theater to see a Ryan Reynolds movie. It was the first Deadpool film. So I've seen that. I really liked him in Safe House. I like that movie a lot. I'm trying to think. I don't know what else I've seen him in. I'm sure some other stuff. But yeah, Blake Lively. I've seen a few of her episodes of Gossip Girl. But not much else. I think I saw another movie with her. But I'm curious to hear what you think of these two individuals and of this astrological reflection. Now moving on to the 9. So this year is a 9. 2016 was a 9. 2007 was a 9. 1998 was a 9. 1989 was a 9. 1980, if you can go back that far like me, was a 9. Those are the 6 years in my lifetime that have been 9s. Now, the last 3 new moons of 2024, including one that we're going to talk about in this episode, are all at 9 degrees. The new moon in Scorpio was at 9 degrees. The new moon in Sagittarius at 9 degrees. The new moon in Capricorn at 9 degrees. So the last 3 new moons of 2025 at 9 degrees. The last 3 new moons of 2024 at 9 degrees. The first 3 new moons of 2025 are also at 9 degrees. That is the new moon in Aquarius, the new moon in Pisces, and the new moon in Aries. So each of these moons, 6 new moons, both can be divided by 3, 9, and 6. These are sacred numbers. 3, 6, 9. There's magic in these numbers. Magic in these numbers. 9 is the final single digit. I mean, I can't just help but look and just think about the astrology of how we're moving into a 9 year, and the last 3 new moons of the previous year and the first 3 moons of the 9 year are all at 9 degrees. So what is 9? 9 indicates endings because it is the final single digit. It's the final single digit. It's the last of the single digits. So 9 represents endings, and with an ending comes a beginning. 2026 will be a 1. That's the beginning. So think back, what was going on for you in 2016, 2007, 1998, 1989, 1980? Whatever age you were in those years adds up to the same number. I was born in 1975, so in 1980, I turned 5. In 1989, I turned 14. 1 plus 4 is 5. In 1998, I turned 23. 2 plus 3 is 5. In 2007, I turned 32. 3 plus 2 is 5. In 2016, I turned 41. 4 plus 1 is 5. And in 2025, I'm going to hit the big 5-0. 5 plus 0 is 5. 5 is exploration, adventure. And when I look back to each of these years, there was an ending, and through that ending, I went on a new adventure. Some of these endings have been difficult, challenging. So I think it's important moving into 2025 to be open to the ending that is coming for you. Because the more that you're clinging to the old way, the more challenging the inevitable change will be. In 1980, I turned 5. And in 1981, I started kindergarten. So 1980 was the last year of my life before school. It was the ending of my baby phase, my little childhood phase. Because in 1981, I had to go on that new adventure where I was going to school. And that was hard, that first year, kindergarten. Mrs. Varner, she was tough. She is tough. I remember her telling us, she's like, I have to put name tags on the floor. We sat on the floor. And she put name tags on the floor because she needed to separate certain kids from each other. Because we were a rowdy class. She said the 8th graders came in after we left because that's where they had their student council meeting in the afternoon. We were just like half day. And they said, Mrs. Varner, what's on the floor there? She's like, well, those are the name tags for my kids. We didn't have that when we were in kindergarten here, Mrs. Varner. Well, yes, because you were a good class. That's what she told us. Our class we were not the good class. So that was my adventure in 1981, leading into 1982. In 1989, that bookend, that was the end of my time at this elementary school. I went to a K through 8th. So I spent 9 years at the same school. In 1989 was like, oh my God, this is my last year at this school. Next is high school. It's scary. I kind of felt like I was excited. I finally made it to the top of the mountain, so to speak. So I was ready for it to end. I felt like I really accomplished something. Maybe for the first time in my life, I felt like I accomplished something. I remember on that day of my 8th grade graduation, which was in 1990, I had a smile on my face so big that my face hurt the next day. It happened every time I graduated from high school, also college. Put a lot of time and effort into that place. 1998 was the year that I graduated college. It was an El Nino year. I was at UCSB. It rained 50 inches. Super depressing. It rained so much that even when the sun was out, it was raining. And I'm not even joking. I remember walking to campus one day, And it was bright outside. The sun was shining in my face. I was wearing sunglasses, but it was raining on me. I was like, I've never experienced that before, where I'm looking at the sun and it's raining on me. That's how much it's raining here. I felt like Dustin Hoffman from The Graduate. I was lost at sea, sitting at the bottom of the pool. What am I going to do with my life? I had an idea, but I didn't really know if I had the courage to do it. Then later that year in 1998, I got into acting school. And I remember driving down from Santa Barbara to Los Angeles down the 101 freeway with the ocean right next to me here between Santa Barbara and Ventura. And I was just like envisioning in a very specific way, as I'm a non-specific manifestor, not knowing I'm doing it specifically, and I'm envisioning my whole life before me, and I'm just like, oh, it's going to be amazing. Yeah. So much harder than I could have ever imagined. Had no idea what I was getting into. But that ending, leaving Santa Barbara, was really tough. And moving to LA was tough. It took me 2 years before I even knew up from down in LA. I was lost. I came from a small town where you walk out your front door and the first person you see is somebody you know. Now I'm in a city where first person I see is probably somebody that I don't know. Very different experience. That was a death and a rebirth of me. 2007 is when I really feel like I became a man. Because that's when we found out that my dad's cancer had come back, stage 4. And the next year he was gone in 2008. When a loved one finds out that they have cancer, it can feel like a death sentence immediately. My dad found out in 2001. I remember looking at his face as he told me the news, told me not to worry, everything's going to be fine. Yeah, okay. I didn't buy that for 1 second. But when you get that kind of information, it's like the heat is turned on the stove. And the pot starts boiling and everything comes to the surface. Quickly, violently. And so all of my trauma that I'd experienced at the hands of my father started boiling up. And it was reaching a peak in 2007. Because in 2007, I took 2 big trips. In May of that year, I went to Greece with a bunch of college friends, sailed through the Greek Isles, amazing. Very difficult trip at the same time. Being there with college friends, that's a whole other story I won't get into on this episode. But I will talk about my trip to Peru with my family, my mom, dad, and sister. My cousin lived in Peru. We went to visit her and her family. We went to Lima, Cusco, Ollantaytambo or Abambe, and Machu Picchu, Sacsayhuaman. My parents were supposed to go in 2006 with my sister. I didn't have the money to go, or the time. I was really struggling, waiting tables, living month to month. I begged my parents not to go that year. I asked them to wait another year so I could have money to save up so that I could go with them. I was really afraid that if they went without me, something bad would happen to them, and I didn't want to be left alone. So, of course, when we postponed the trip and went in 2007, I thought something bad was going to happen to us then. thought the plane was going to crash. So I told my therapist. And it'd be my fault because I made them wait. And my therapist said, well, when was the last time you went on a trip and or with your mom, dad, and sister for this amount of time, for 10 days? When was the last time you spent that much time with your cousin? I was like, spend that much time with my cousin? I was 10 years old. That's when she left for college. She was like an older sister to me. And I had a lot of issues with her growing up. So there was tension there. And the last time I'd spent 10 days consecutively with my mom, dad, and sister, I was 18. So it'd been 14 years. My therapist was like, I don't think the plane's going to crash. I think that there's just a lot of tension going into this trip with you and your family. And she was right. Everything about my dad annoyed me. I couldn't stand him. Everything he did got under my skin. The way that he breathed, the way that he walked, the clothes that he wore, didn't matter what he did. And I was always there to needle him, make fun of him, agitate him, press him. Because I was angry at him. I was angry at what had occurred in my childhood between him and I. The way that he had treated me. He was the first person I ever loved. And he broke that trust when he abused me. And by the time I was 10 years old, things had changed. He became a devout Christian. And it was great for him. His whole attitude changed. Everything about him changed. I was no longer afraid of him as I was before. Because he was now trying to live a godly life. But now I was 32 years old. Life hadn't turned out the way that I wanted it to. So who was I to blame? My parents. It's their fault. But especially my dad. And especially now because he's got cancer. And I'm angry at him because he might not be here that much longer. And so we're in Peru for a few days. Lima, then Cusco. We go to Sacsayhuaman, then Ollanta Tambo or Abamba. And we make our way to Machu Picchu. And if you've ever been to Machu Picchu, you know it's an otherworldly place. It bends the mind. Everything that you thought you knew about life on Earth becomes inexplicable. Because how did these people create these structures with these massive stones that weigh several tons on the side of a mountain in the middle of a jungle? It doesn't make sense. And then when you're standing in a structure and you're looking through these two windows, and the tour guide says that this window over here, the sun shines directly through on the winter solstice as it rises. And this window here, the sun shines through during the summer solstice as it sets. I might be fudging the details a bit there, but I know it had to do with the solstices. I don't know which window was which, or if it was sunrise or sunset, but it was on the solstice that the sun shines directly through these windows. Whoever built this was deeply in tune with the planets and stars. I can't even imagine how, with our technology that we have now, how we could create these structures in that place. I don't know if it's possible. On the way there, we're taking the train. There's another family on the train. They're from California. We're friendly with them. They're on the bus with us. You ride this bus up this winding road to the top of Machu Picchu. All there are on this road are buses, like charter buses. The road is like this big. It's so narrow. And you're looking down the side of the mountain. You're like, wow, if this bus driver just veers a little too far to the right, that's it. It really tests your tolerance for fear, anxiety. And so that, coupled with where are we? What do we really know about this world? And then seeing my dad, who's so confident in his belief of Jesus Christ, it's annoying to me. When we got back down the mountain, we stopped at a restaurant, and my dad was sitting across from me. He's missing his right eye. It was taken by the cancer, ocular melanoma, and his suitcase is next to him on the right. And he tells me, watch my suitcase, because it's a little sketchy. A lot of people coming up, locals, you'll know what they want. They say beware of pickpockets and that sort of stuff. My suitcase is in between my legs. I don't know why my dad's is in between his. I tell him, put it in between your legs. He's like, watch my suitcase. Fine. And so I'm sitting there, and because I'm not looking at the suitcase the whole time, he starts poking me with his umbrella and says, watch my suitcase. And I flipped out. I lost it. I snapped at him. I screamed at him, and he fired back at me. We made a scene, a public scene. I was completely embarrassed. I saw the family that we had made friends with on the train and bus. They were nearby. I glanced over. They were looking at us. I never spoke to them again. It was embarrassing. I was mostly embarrassed for my mom and my sister. I felt bad for them because of our behavior. Then we were on the train, headed back. It's like a 6-hour, 8-hour train ride. It's incredibly long from Machu Picchu back to Cusco. They have in-train entertainment, live in-train entertainment, people dancing in costume up and down the aisleway. Then they're selling clothes. I bought my dad a red cashmere sweater as like a peace offering. But I didn't really mean it. I wanted to mean it, but I didn't really mean it. I felt like he's going to like this because, not knowing at the time, but understanding now, he's a Taurus sun, Taurus moon. He's somebody who really valued the material. His dad, my grandfather, owned a clothing store, and my dad took over that clothing store. He didn't want to. He had other dreams. He wanted to go to dental school, then law school, but was forced into the family business, and then the family business went out of business. And the struggle through that was dumped on me as a child. That evening we went out to a restaurant, and I was still simmering. We're in this nice restaurant, the four of us, and sitting right outside in the window next to us is a mother and her 2 children sitting on the sidewalk. My dad goes out there and gives them some money, then thanks God for our abundance. I was offended by that. Just as I was offended when we went to the churches in Cusco and my parents were marveling at these beautiful altars made of silver and gold in the churches, and all I could think about was the fact that this was the gold of the people who lived here. This is the silver of the people who lived here. It was stolen from them, and they were forced to kneel and bow to this god. And so I raised a stink about this at dinner, picked a fight. We got in a fight, and I ended up leaving, walking back to the hotel by myself. Went into my hotel room, sitting there in the dark, hating everyone, hating life, angry. My sister comes in, tries to comfort me. I hated her too. Felt like she always sided with my parents, never with me. I always took her side, never my parents. So I left her in the room, walked out, and at that moment, that's when I heard my parents. I heard through Ray's voices them talking about me. And that's when the walls of the hotel started to move like waves. And it was at that moment that I realized that I had a choice. I could pretend that I didn't hear what my parents just said about me, and I could shove it down, bury it, let it fester. Or I could acknowledge it and step forward. And that's what I did. I knocked on the door, and my mom answered it with a smiling face. "Hi, honey," clearly teary-eyed, because they'd been fighting about me. And I confronted them. And I don't know how I did this, but I somehow got my dad back on the bed, and I was on top of him. There were raised voices. But at the end, I confronted him about my pain. The pain that I attributed to him as my father when I was a child. When I did that, everything shifted. That was the end of my pain. That was the end of 2007. That was the ending. It was the end of my pain. My dad took it. I don't remember what he said to me or if he said anything to me. He apologized, he didn't apologize, I don't know, but I remember looking in his one eye, bouncing back and forth between my two. And I saw him listening to me. And I saw the pain in his eye for what had happened between us. And it's through that I felt him accept responsibility. And because of that, I forgave him. The next day I woke up, and all the little things about my dad that annoyed me were gone. I loved him. And I could empathize with the suffering that he had experienced at the hands of his father, my grandfather, who I love very much. My dad was suddenly like a child to me. And I loved him so much. And it was 5 months later that we found out that his cancer had come back, stage 4. And 9 months later, he was gone. But because of that moment in Cusco, where I was able to really express myself to him, and through that forgive him, he gave me the greatest gift of peace. Peace within our relationship. And I think I gave him that gift as well. Because by the time of his last day, we were as close as we'd ever been. I tell you this story because I want you to know what the opportunity is for you in 2025. What is weighing on you? What is causing suffering in your life? Be open to the possibilities that exist in 2025 to bring that suffering to an end. In 2016, I was suffering again. I was suffering in my career as a writer and a waiter. I was in the fetal position on the bathroom floor. Maybe you've heard me tell this story before, but it was no longer fun for me. There was no sense of fun in writing a screenplay anymore. There had been before, but now it was just suffering, and I needed it to stop. And so it's in that moment that I prayed to God, in my non-specific manifestation, anything, as long as it's something that I love, as long as it's something that helps people, and as long as it's something that makes me money, so I can live off of doing this. Show it to me. What can it be? And a few months later, or a few weeks later, it's through the writing that the astrology came to me, through the screenwriting. And so, learning the astrology helped me forgive myself. In 2007, I forgave my father. In 2016, I forgave myself. And through that self-forgiveness, my dreams came true in the most magical, powerful way that was beyond what I could have even imagined. Because I never would have imagined that I'd be a guide using the language of astrology to help people navigate their way through life. But this fits me in a way that the screenwriting never did. And it's because I was open to the ending of that career that I had hoped to achieve. As you've heard me say before in previous episodes, before that it was writing, or before the writing it was acting, or even being a musician, or a professional basketball player, or a football player. There's endings to these. So what is coming to an end for you in 2025 that will open something up new for you moving forward? Now, this begins with the new moon in Capricorn, which is occurring on December 30th at 2:27 p.m. Pacific time at 9 degrees. This new moon is aligning with 4 stars, 4 fixed stars: Al-Janib, Al-Hina, Felis, and Skate. Al-Janib is the flank in Arabic. It symbolizes support and energetic breakthroughs. It's in Aries at 9 degrees, inspiring decisive action. What is the decisive action that you need to take in order to set your intentions to achieve your goals and ambitions? When you're thinking of that Capricorn frequency, it's about, what are you spending your time on? What are your goals? What are your ambitions? What is worth the work? What is worth the work? Al-Hina is the brand in Arabic. That's at 9 degrees in Cancer. This signifies distinction and connection to origins. That's Cancer, representing the foundation of where you come from. Its opposition to the new moon sparks a creative tension, encouraging you to nurture your creativity and integrate it into a greater goal and ambition. Ultimately, one that satisfies your emotional needs. Felis in Virgo is Latin for the cat. It embodies intuition, mystery, esoteric knowledge, representing self-reliance and subtle strength. Its trine, a supportive aspect to the new moon in Capricorn, provides energy, enhancing agility, grace, and keen instincts, all of which are crucial for achieving your goals with precision and nuance. And then Skate, which I believe we've talked about, is at 9 degrees in Pisces. We've talked about it in earlier episodes. Maybe when it was aligning with either the new moon in Scorpio or Sagittarius, both of which it did. This is the leg in Arabic, signifying exploration and stability in the spiritual or esoteric realm, which is Pisces, representing hope and the connection to a higher power. Its sextile to the new moon in Capricorn offers expansive vision and faith, helping you manifest your ambitions with clarity and purpose. So during this new moon, think about where you're going. What is worth your time? And what do you need to shed along the way in order for you to ascend to the highest point of whatever it is you're working to achieve? Because if you're climbing to the top of Mount Everest, you're not taking everything from the base camp to the top of the mountain. You've got to leave some stuff behind. So what are you leaving behind? What are you leaving behind? What needs to be left behind? I mean, it's sad to say, but in order for me to grow fully into being a man, my dad had to be left behind. In order for me to move fully into my full capacity as a human being, I had to leave behind my screenwriting aspirations and be open to new opportunities. That's what 2025 brings. As something comes to a close, something opens in return. Occurring the same day as the new moon in Capricorn is Mercury in Sagittarius, forming a trine with Chiron in Aries. This is an aspect that occurred on November 19th and on December 1st during the new moon in Sagittarius. So this is the second new moon that Mercury has aligned with Chiron from these same two signs, Sagittarius and Aries. Mercury is the messenger of the gods, guide of souls to the underworld, the planet of consciousness, communication, and coordination. Chiron is the wound and the ancient wisdom which is unlocked through healing that wound. Sagittarius is mutable fire. Aries is cardinal fire, so fire energy. This is saying, are you being honest with yourself about your fears and insecurities? As in order to facilitate an ending, you have to be honest with yourself about your fears and insecurities about what that ending means. I had my therapist ask me, do you want your dad to die? I was shocked by that question. But when I thought about it, part of me felt like yes. Even though I didn't want him to die, he was never going to heal from his ailment. And the suffering was too much for all of us, including him. And I even told him a week before he died that it would be okay if he did. That I loved him no matter what, always. But we would be okay. And I hope he appreciated that. Because it's something that I know he wished he would have said to his mother. Which is a whole other crazy story. But I had another friend tell me that, are you ready to let him go? And I said, yes, but I want him to do all this stuff. I want him to, do a cleanse and change his diet. And she's like, well, that doesn't sound like you're ready to let him go. I wasn't being honest with myself. It's very interesting that Mercury, the planet of communication, aligning in a trine with Chiron, the wound, happens 3 times in a 5-week period, twice during new moons. Planets are screaming at you to be honest with yourself about your fears and insecurities. I was afraid to let my dad go until I wasn't. I was afraid to not be a screenwriter until I wasn't. But I had to acknowledge that I was afraid before I could reconcile the fear. So often I hear people say, no, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid. Yeah, okay. They're pushing down the fear. We are all afraid of something. We all have fear. It's natural to have fear. You know you have fear when you feel anger. Anger is rooted in fear. So unless you're a Zen master and just like walking on air 24/7, there's fear. It comes up when you're angry. The anger will help you find the fear, and this transit will help you key in on what that fear is so that you can be honest with yourself and see the big picture. This transit occurs from Sunday to Wednesday, December 29th to January 1st, with the exact trine occurring the same day as the new moon in Capricorn, Monday, December 30th. This same day, Monday, December 30th, Pluto in Aquarius forms a sextile with the North Node, retrograde in Aries. This transit occurs from December 16th to January 11th, and it's an exact sextile on Monday, December 30th. We've talked about this a lot with Pluto and Aquarius, how we are going through a transformation of the community, of society. In order for society to transform or change, we need to transform or change as individuals. And this sextile with Pluto and Aquarius and the North Node in Aries is saying, are you being authentic in the community? Are you being yourself? Where are you hiding? Aquarius is about being open. It's about coming out of the closet. It's about showing people who you are. So you've got Mercury in Sagittarius aligning with the North Node, aligning with Chiron in Aries, and Pluto and Aquarius aligning with the North Node in Aries. There's a lot of attention being brought to who you are. The more that you are clear about who you are, and the more confidence you have in being who you are around everyone that you come into contact with, the more that you will facilitate that change, and through that change, there will be endings. And when you shed that old skin, it will make you lighter so that you can ascend to goals and ambitions that go beyond your imagination. Venus transits into Pisces on Thursday, January 2nd. The goddess of love and beauty, the planet of relationships, in the mutable water sign symbolized by the fish, the sign where Venus is exalted. Venus is in a position of power in Pisces because Pisces is the intuitive, compassionate, empathetic sign. So if you are intuitive, compassionate, and empathetic in your relationships, you're winning. Now the flip side, the lower frequency, is that you're giving too much. That's something else to watch for when Venus transits through Pisces. And this is a frequency that we are going to be able to get comfortable with through the discomfort, because even though, so Venus is transiting through Pisces from January 2nd to February 3rd, but then it transits back into Pisces, retrograde. It retrogrades back into Pisces on March 27th and is there for another month until April 30th. So we've got 2 months separated by 2 months with Venus in Pisces. When Venus is retrograde in Pisces, it's going to retrograde from degrees 29 to 24, then back through forward to 29, and then back into Aries. So Venus moves into its retrograde shadow on January 28th. Its retrograde begins on March 1st. It ends on April 12th. And it moves out of its retrograde shadow on May 15th. But Venus is transiting through the entirety of Pisces from January 2nd to February 3rd. The last time Venus transited through Pisces was March 11th to April 4th, 2024. The time before that was January 26th to February 19th, 2023. And the time before that was April 5th to May 2nd, 2022. Think back to these dates. Look at your socials, look at your photos, look at your emails and texts. What was going on in your life during these dates? It's going to give you clues for what could be in store for you this time around as Venus transits through the sign where it is exalted, Pisces. This is bringing greater compassion and sensitivity, greater empathy to your relationships. If you were born with key astrological points or planets in Gemini or Sagittarius, there could be conflicts or challenges in your relationships. Like if you're born with Mars in Sagittarius or Gemini, there's going to be a conflict in your relationship whenever Venus transits into a square with that Mars. If you were born with Saturn in Sagittarius, which is a lot of you folks in the mid to late 80s, Venus is going to square Saturn. That means that you've got some hard work to do in your relationships when Venus is squaring your Saturn. So look at your astrological code, see what degree your planets are in Gemini or Sagittarius. That will clue you in to when there may be challenges in your relationships, or if you're foggy about it, schedule a reading with me and we'll get into it. But if you're born with key planets or points in any earth or water sign, this may be a time when your relationships thrive. Now, most of us probably have planets in Sagittarius or Gemini and earth and water. So this is why the degrees are important, because it's going to help pinpoint what days are going to be more positive and what days are going to be more challenging. And when you're clear about the challenging days, it supports you in taking it easy on yourself, where you can really ground into the work in a loving way, in a supportive way. Now, there's 2 more transits, and they both involve Mars, and they involve Pluto in the North Node. So Pluto is the god of death, lord of the underworld, the planet of transformation. The North Node is the soul's purpose. Mars is the god of war, the planet of action, aggression, and conflict. There is a magical alignment happening here. It's intense, but it's also magical. Whenever you get Mars and Pluto together, there's going to be some combustion. I mean, these are the two planets that rule Scorpio, so the combustion is going to be the transformation. Mars is opposing Pluto. Mars opposed Pluto back on November 3rd, when Mars was at the final degree of Cancer. Pluto was at the final degree of Capricorn. Now they've both transited into the following sign, where Mars is retrograde in Leo, the fixed fire sign symbolized by the lion. Pluto transiting through Aquarius, the fixed air sign symbolized by the water bear. This is occurring from December 28th to January 6th, with the exact opposition on January 3rd, while Mars forms a trine, a supportive aspect, with the North Node in Aries from December 31st to January 6th. That's Tuesday to Monday, with the exact trine occurring on Saturday, January 4th. So they're all happening around the same time. Pluto, sextile the North Node trine Mars, Mars opposite Pluto. Pluto and Mars are going to align again in opposition the end of April. So really think of this as, 3 assignments. The first one was early November. The second one is early January. The third one is the end of April. So what is it the nature of these assignments? Well, the first assignment with Mars in Cancer opposing Pluto in Capricorn was churning up the past. Is about churning up the past, having the courage to face your past so you can make peace with your past. And in making peace with the past, you're transforming your sense of authority, your relationship to authority, and what it is you want to achieve. Maybe you didn't believe you could achieve what you want to achieve because of issues in the past, whether it be your own childhood or your ancestry. And so Pluto opposing Mars in early November was clearing that space. Now that we've worked through that assignment, Mars transiting through Leo is encouraging you to open your heart, to be courageous in the expression of your sense of joy, laughter, playfulness, creativity. To do so in a way that is authentic to you. That's the aspect to the North Node. And then the opposition to Pluto is saying, I have the courage to be myself. I have the courage to open up, to really open my heart from that place of joy, laughter, creativity in the group dynamic, in the community. Now, the community may push back. The community may say, we don't like that. That's not fun or funny to us. Well, then maybe it's time to find a new community. Or maybe you double down and push harder at the community, and the community needs to change. We're all changing. You're changing, I'm changing, the community's changing. And it's happening in a way that's going to feel more rapid than it has maybe in your entire life. This transformation that's occurring. In order to harness the transformation, it's about being authentic in who you are and what brings joy to your heart. Don't suppress. I think back to that night in Cusco. And I'm so thankful that I had the courage to knock on that door, face my parents, and have a real talk conversation with them that was incredibly uncomfortable for all of us. But I think we're all better for it. Because there's no more hiding. So what do you need to do to open your heart? What do you need to do to experience joy and laughter? How can you do that in a way that challenges the community, the group? And what are you willing to bring to an end in 2025? What are you hoping comes to an end in 2025? Can you not think of anything? And if you can't, that's fine. But now you're aware. You're going to be on the lookout. You're going to know that something's going to happen here this year that is akin to what happened in 2016, 2007, 1998, 1989, 1980. Think back to those dates. Think back to those years. See if you can map out what has occurred in your life in those years that is a thread connecting. It's something. Spend some time with it. And spend some time on Monday focusing on what you want to do with your time. Monday afternoon, 2:27 p.m. Pacific time, the new moon in Capricorn. Is there an ambition that you're ready to let go of? A goal that is no longer in accordance with who you are? Clear the space. There's only so much time each and every day. Use it wisely. You can have all the money in the world, but there's still only 24 hours in a day. And you can, if you have more money, you can hire more people to maximize that time, but there's still only 24 hours in the day. Only 7 days in the week. Moon day, Mars day, Mercury day, Jupiter day, Venus day, Saturn day, Sun day. What are you doing with your time? Thank you for spending your time with me in 2024 on this podcast right now. It's an extra long one, so really appreciate you being here. Like and subscribe to this channel. Write us a favorable review. Schedule a reading. I'll look forward to seeing you. It's an honor to be here with you. I'm grateful for the space that you've given me to be vulnerable with you. Until next week. Thank you for listening to the weekly transit. If you're curious to learn how these transits or any other transits may be affecting you, or if you're interested in learning more about your astrological code, contact me for a reading at theweeklytransit.com. This episode was produced by me, Scott Tajarian. Music written by Ben Leinbach from Listen Deep by Amber Herzog Lyman. Wishing you all the best as you ride the planetary waves.